Hi, Paul Sackett, Good News Planet. I'm speaking with Kevin McCarney. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Paul. How are you, sir?
Okay, good. Kevin runs a very successful chain of restaurants called Poquito Mas. Congratulations, in the California area in Burbank. And also has written a very interesting book, I will say, The Secrets of Successful Communications. And we're going to talk about any time, I guess, on holiday time, what are some of the good thoughts about communicating with each other? And I'm sure that this doesn't only mean at a work situation. I'm sure this is a home life as well. So tell us about the book. It's I like your big brain, littler brain
Yeah,
concept.
you know, I've done a lot of research on this, and I've been in the customer service business all my life. I've been dealing with people since I was very young, and one of the things I noticed was a different pattern in the way people responded or reacted to different situations. And so I did so much investigation on this, and I decided, you know, aside from everything happening up in the brain, and there's millions of things happening up there, and there's a very boring way to explain it that takes a lot of pages, or I sort of distilled it down into two different thoughts. The big brain, which is that neocortex, that really thinking part of the brain that makes us human and really smart, and where all our smarts are. And then the little brain, that impulsive, overreacting little brain that's going to be sarcastic and selfish and spit out the wrong comment at the wrong time. And I put that right next to our mouths because that's usually where it gets us in trouble, where we say something we wish we hadn't said.
I like it. Well, so
yeah.
You're sort of like a cooking neurologist.
Well, you know what? I can tell you that I've studied this stuff not only academically but also just observationally, looking at different people, and I've had so many different experiences. You know, I've worked with so many different kinds of people as well, and for different kinds of people. And I have to credit maybe a boss that used his little brain a little bit too much, sort of inspired me to go out on my own in a very unique way. Because when you're around people that use their little brain too often, it gets uncomfortable. And if you want to hang around people that use their big brain more often, we all use our little brain once in a while. We all make mistakes, and there's ways to fix that if we do.
So let's talk about fixing that. I mean, just one question before that. I mean, some people are, I don't know whether it's necessary to call it sarcastic, but want to fool around. I'll call it. That's want to see people laugh or not take things very seriously. And some person might take things seriously. How do you deal with something like that?
It's a good question. The number one thing is know your audience, know who's in the room for most of us, know who you're talking to. And that's an important point now because, we're a much highly sensitive society now than I think we've ever been. And, every sensitivity is accentuated in the news, and different people are higher sensitive than others on different subjects. And until you really know who you're talking to and you know their sensitivities and you know their sense of humor, it's a good idea to not try to go with those sarcastic little comments that we might think are funny or we might think are clever. Somebody else might think are a little bit more of an insult. So you really want to be careful. Know the people you're talking to. It becomes a bigger issue now because of emails and texting and all this digital communication we're doing. Because now everybody's in the room. You send out a text to somebody, and they don't like your text. Well, they forward it to everybody. You send out an email to somebody 5 years ago, and all of a sudden that email comes back to haunt you because you thought what you were saying at the time was really funny, but then now it's out of context. Of course, somebody can take it and manipulate it. So it's really a time to be cautious. You don't have to be overly careful, but you do have to be careful and understand this world is exploding with communication devices, and everything we say, everything we do, but everything we say can and will be used against us in social media at some point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you entirely. In fact, I'm very, very, very careful to ever put my opinion out there in a written format. I don't mind speaking my opinion because most of the time it's usually a conversation, like with yourself.
Yeah.
And that I should be able to say what I want to say. Hopefully you hear what I am saying. Hopefully if you don't hear to whatever degree, you'll say, well, what do you mean by that, right?
Yeah.
So we have a better shot on the one-to-one basis.
Well, you've made a great point there, Paul. You say, what do you mean by that? That means you're listening, and that's a key point, because lots of times you see people get together and you see two monologues, and where somebody has something they want to say, and they say it as much as they can, and then the other person says whatever they want to say until there's a break, and then they go back and forth saying what they want to say, but not really listening to the other person. So you end up with two monologues instead of a dialogue. As you so aptly put it there, if you're listening, you're going to have a dialogue, and if you're not listening, you're going to have monologues.
I agree with you 100%. In fact, when I started in television many 40-plus years ago or whatever, I remember that one of the most famous soap opera directors saying, what it takes is to be a good listener. You need to hear what the other person said as their part, so then you can answer, especially if it gets all confusing out there.
Yeah, it does. And this holiday season, it's so critical. In any season really, but there's different functions coming up. You go to these different events, whether it's a home event or a work event. You want to be careful of a couple of critical moments that can kind of take over your life on this stuff. And if you're going to an office event, and you're going to be meeting some people that you only see once a year, get to know their names and get to know how to pronounce their names, because that's one of those sensitivities that people have. Is like if somebody mispronounces their name, and especially if it's a boss that you only see once a year, you want to make sure you know how to pronounce his or her name.
I agree with you entirely. I love this comment here, and you have a beautiful website for growing your brain, I will say. BigBrain.com is the website, and we can talk about that in a second. But I really like what you're doing here.
Well, thank you.
I'm a communication major. I've been in the business a long time. I did the Brain series for PBS many years ago. And I think here's a statement that's written down here. Every encounter is an opportunity to make a good choice. That's so important, because we're going right by it all. And what's your thought there?
Well, I think that what we learn, and sometimes as even as parents, every opportunity, every time we have an interaction with somebody, we're making what I would call the last impression. We already made our first impression with a lot of people, but every interaction is the last impression they have of us. It's the last thing they remember about us. Mm-hmm. So it becomes more critical, because they're not going to remember the first impression that was maybe a year or two or 5 years ago. That's gone. But they will remember the last impression that you make. So if you find yourself in a tough situation, and I do these little training sessions with different people, and I did some for some principals the other day, and I tell them, look, every communication you have with somebody is either building trust or taking it away. If you're in a position of leadership, everything you say is letting people have more confidence in you because they can trust you. Or if you're being snarky and sarcastic or selfish in what you're saying, that's going to take trust away from the relationship. So every relationship you have, whether it's business or personal, the trust is the key to that relationship. And using your big brain will help build that trust. Using your little brain, letting your little brain take over the conversation, will definitely undermine that trust.
Did you learn this being a doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theater?
I stood out in front, when I was 17 years old. I stood out in front. I sort of guarded the restaurant, from people just walking in from the forecourt. But I met everybody from all over the world. And you watch the forecourt, it was like watching a movie. And you have different people coming up doing different things. And, oh, my gosh, the number of people that were just so excited about being there, but then disappointed that they didn't see a movie star. And to the people that, this is the 60s and 70s. I'm standing out in front of the Grauman's Chinese. So I saw quite a few things there that never made it on television.
Let me ask you, in the book, The Secrets of Successful Communication, so how would somebody start? I mean, so some people suggest, I'm going to a TM event tonight, a David Lynch event, and there's I'm a yoga instructor or whatever, to slow the mind down, to meditate, to kind of be in the moment and all these kinds of things. What's your thought? What do you say to somebody who is, just running their life like they normally do, but now want to, take a moment to consider maybe evaluating the way you're going about it all?
Well, it's a great comment. I think yoga is great, and I think meditation is a wonderful thing. It's a good idea to learn how to slow down your responses. And when you think about response versus reaction, response means there's a little bit more thought given to it versus reaction. And the best thing you can do is and we have 21 tools and 21 traps in the book. Take a look at, and we've put this up on the website too, and I've got a couple of different worksheets up on the website for free for people to get to. There's a couple of different traps in there to really be careful of. You don't want to fall into these standard traps that come with any season or with any communication. And you really want to, as you pointed, you want to take time before you respond to somebody, especially if you've got somebody coming at you with their little brain. You don't want to follow them and just try to meet their loudness or meet their tone or meet their anger or meet their frustration. You want to sort of diffuse it, and you want to be able to be the one in control, because the one who is in control is the person who is not overreacting to the situation.
Aha. I've always found that with my daughter and my grandkids now, they sort of like slow you up, put you in perspective, don't they?
Well, my youngest, I tell you, I thank them so much for being the kids they are. And as a parent, I think I have learned that, and I've talked to so many other parents about this, I think overreacting as a parent, which is easy to do because, kids have a tendency to push our buttons. It's very easy to overreact to different situations because the kids themselves, they're learning how to use tone, they're learning how to use different words, and they may not use it at the right time, and they may be upset because they've got homework due, and we can't feed into that. We can't follow them. When they're using little brain tones, we have to understand, take a step back, and you know what? Let that pass. Judo has a wonderful concept. Judo is this martial arts where if somebody's throwing a punch at you, you step aside and let the punch go by and let the energy go by, and then you come back in and engage. It's the same thing with conversation. If you've got kids that are overreacting to different things, don't overreact yourself. Don't go into those parental cliches that sort of undermine the relationship. And I think that you're a great point, Paul, is that kids teach us a lot. And my kids have certainly taught me quite a bit, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, and me as well. So bigbrain.com. So back to the website for a second here. You can get a free worksheet. And so what would that be? You're allowed a downloadable
you get
worksheet, and what would that include in that worksheet?
I'll tell you what it is. This is one of the best tools we have for big brain use, office or home. It's called Good Gossip. Now, we all know how gossip travels. We all know how damaging gossip is. Mm-hmm. But what we did is we studied this a lot, and I had a situation where an employee was a new manager. I'd put her in charge of a restaurant, and she had a difficulty with an employee. They weren't getting along, and they just weren't communicating. So I pulled her aside. I said, listen, okay, tomorrow's his day off. I want you to say something to the entire crew, get them together at that early morning shift meeting, and say something nice about him. Pick out 3 things he does really well. I'm sure you can find 3 things. Say something great about him. She did. And the very next day, after his day off, he came in, and he looked at her, and he said, Angela, how are you this morning? He'd never even acknowledged her before that. And what happened is within 24 hours, the word had gotten back that she had said something nice about him. And it's the same way gossip travels, but it has a different impact. Mm-hmm. So we have a worksheet up there that tells people how to use good gossip. Say something nice about somebody. Be genuine, be honest and sincere, but say something nice about somebody behind their back. And you'll find out that it has that residual impact that really is a benefit to everybody versus gossip itself, which has that negative impact.
The art of positive thinking, positive comments. I mean, our whole broadcast is built around that. Good news broadcast, 14 years, 5,000 shows of people talking positive. In fact, we ask people not even to say anything negative. You can't say anything negative about anybody else or any person.
And I'm so happy you guys are here, man. I really am.
There's a lot of us here, and that's the good news too. Most of the world is plain old good and kind and not even bothering anybody. So there's a lot of good things that we all are quite thankful for in the world. But no doubt, I think by far a little sugar goes further than some salt.
Absolutely. And again, there's so much more good in the world than there is bad. But, unfortunately, the bad is sometimes what people pay attention to. So I'm glad they're paying attention to you and your show. All
right. Well, Kevin, congratulations. I really like the book. I like your website, your whole philosophy. You're a busy guy also, running those restaurants. I look
well, that's
forward
okay. This
to
is
meeting
important
you.
to me. This is important to me. Helping people communicate better is a passion of mine. It's what I will be doing the rest of my life.
Well, let's talk further. We're on definitely the same page. I see a TV show here, Kevin. I made a bunch of them. I used to manage Television City over there, Fairfax and Beverly.
Wow, right, my neighborhood.
There you go, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk, because I really like what you do, and I like the way you're going about it. It's real. It's real. I'm going to put it in quotes.
Thank you,
that's a
Paul.
good thing
I appreciate that. And definitely, let's talk. I'm here all the time.
Beautiful. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing. But one last question.
Yes,
What's
sir.
good news for you, Kevin?
Good news for me is that my daughter comes home from Ireland from study on Monday, and I haven't seen her in 4 months, so that's my good news.
As good as it gets. All right, thanks, my friend.
All right, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.